I woke to the soft buzz of machinery and a ceiling that meant nothing to me. For a second I thought I was drifting in a dream, until the sharp pull in my ribs reminded me it was real. I'd been unconscious. 3 months, they would eventually explain. But the first thing I saw wasn't a doctor. It wasn't family. It was an empty hospital room. No father. No brother. No one at all. Only a small note left neatly on the tray. 5 words, written in my father's sharp, unmistakable handwriting. We stopped paying. Good luck. At first, I thought that single sentence was the end of everything. Later, a nurse told me it wasn't, not even close. I cried quietly because I didn't have the strength for anything louder. I lost track of time. All I remember is staring at that note, rereading those 5 words until they blurred into nothing. We stopped paying. Good luck. That handwriting, precise, controlled, the same style he used to sign bonus checks for near strangers. Not the handwriting of the man who used to carry me on his shoulders through our Seattle neighborhood. Not the handwriting of someone who stayed. When my tears finally dried, the silence in the room pressed down on me until it almost became a weight. Silence had never been my friend. In our house, silence wasn't calm. It was the signal before things broke. After my mother died when I was 18, silence became Veronica's native language. Icy, deliberate, weaponized. She never raised her voice, she didn't have to. She could erase you simply by looking past you. My father absorbed that coldness. My brother Landon copied it. And I learned to drown it out with work. 15 years of building internal systems no one knew I created. 15 years of drafting proposals, coding architectural frameworks, writing the backbone of projects, while Landon presented everything to the board with a rehearsed smile. It's a family contribution, he'd say, tapping my shoulder on his way out, as if that made me visible. Meanwhile, my office was a repurposed storage room in the basement. No window. Flickering lights. A chair that always leaned to the left. I told myself it didn't matter as long as the work spoke for itself. Someone would recognize me eventually. But lying in that hospital bed, every breath burning, I finally understood something my mother had seen long before I did. She knew they would shrink me down, erase me if they could. Maybe that's why she spent those late nights with Daniel Price, sealing envelopes I never questioned. Maybe she knew I'd be alone once she was gone. The door clicked open. A shadow moved inside. For a heartbeat, some naive piece of me wished it was my father. It wasn't. A voice I recognized broke the silence. Caroline. Calm, steady. Daniel Price, my mother's estate lawyer. The last person I expected, and the only face that didn't make panic rise in my chest. He stepped inside gently, as though approaching something fragile. Behind him was a man I'd never seen. Tall, sharply dressed, carrying himself with the awareness of someone who evaluates every room as he enters. His eyes flicked over me, not pitying but assessing, like he already knew my story. Daniel settled into the chair beside my bed. I'm relieved you're awake. We've been waiting. We. Not my father. Not my brother. Not Veronica. Daniel. And the stranger in the tailored suit. My throat felt scraped raw. Where's my family? A pause. Daniel's jaw tensed. The stranger looked down. No one answered. I already knew. Daniel cleared his throat. Caroline, this is Ethan Ward. He's been consulting on matters related to your mother's estate. A brief, silent exchange passed between them, something coordinated, urgent. Ethan stepped closer and gave a slight nod. I've reviewed everything tied to your work and your role in the company. I'm here because the next 72 hours will decide what happens to you. I frowned. My future. Daniel let out a slow, steady breath, the kind he used when preparing to deliver difficult news. Your father is reorganizing the company. The board meets in 3 days at the Tech Summit in San Francisco. As of this morning, he plans to strip you of every position and every claim. My pulse hammered. I don't even have authority to strip. Ethan didn't blink. That's exactly it. They've been deleting your presence for years. Your coma gave them a clean opportunity to finish. My hand tightened on the blanket. Finish. Daniel pulled a stack of documents from his briefcase. The pages were clipped neatly face down. He hesitated before turning the first sheet toward me. Richard submitted paperwork declaring you mentally unfit to make decisions. Permanently. He signed everything yesterday. The room tilted. Ethan leaned slightly forward, voice low and steady. He believes you're out of the way legally, physically, professionally. He's convinced you won't fight back. Daniel's voice followed, quiet but fierce. But Caroline, your father miscalculated. They watched me carefully, waiting for a reaction. I couldn't move. My own father had signed me out of my life. Wiped me out with a single signature. But Daniel wasn't done. He didn't simply abandon you, Caroline, he said, voice low but firm. By declaring you incapacitated while protections were still in place, he unknowingly triggered a clause your mother set in motion. I swallowed hard. Clause? I whispered. Daniel opened a slim leather folder. Inside a few crisp, time-worn sheets. One bore my mother's handwriting, familiar and precise. She anticipated this, he said. Even before her illness, she foresaw how things might unravel. She created a trust, one your father never fully controlled, and tied its activation to a very specific condition. Ethan stepped closer, his tone steady but edged with urgency. Abandonment while medically incapacitated. If your father pulled support while you were unable to advocate for yourself, all assets your mother controlled transferred directly to you. My ribs ached again, but this time from anticipation, not pain. Something igniting deep inside me. Daniel tapped the papers gently. Your father signed his withdrawal of support 2 weeks ago. The note he left beside your bed alone satisfies the condition. We stopped paying. Good luck. Those 5 words that had once shattered me now cut in a new way, sharp, alive, full of power. What assets? I croaked. Ethan exchanged a glance with Daniel, then spoke. Nearly $1 billion in combined holdings and voting control tied to your mother's shares. The hospital room seemed to shift, not from weakness but from sudden clarity. For the first time since waking, my spine stiffened against the pillows. He thought he'd buried me. Instead, he dug his own grave. But a trust alone won't convince the board, Ethan added. They still see you as the invisible girl in the storage office cubicle. To assert control, you need evidence. A strategy. Proof. Daniel closed the folder and returned it to his briefcase. That's why we're here. You have 72 hours before the summit. Once Richard announces the restructuring, reversing it will be nearly impossible. We have to act now. I swallowed again. I can barely stand. You won't need to yet, Ethan said. For now you just need access. From his jacket, he placed something solid and cold beside me, a security badge. My photo, my name, and an authorization level I had never seen. My mother, I breathed. Daniel gave a small, solemn smile. She had it made years ago. She wanted you ready, trusted you to do what she couldn't. I held the badge, watching the dim hospital light catch its edges. I wasn't powerless. I had only been asleep. The suite overlooked San Francisco, the city flickering with indifferent life, moving on without me. I perched on the edge of the bed while Ethan linked his laptop to a secure terminal Daniel had set up. The screen glowed, displaying internal logs and archived company data. She built this, I whispered. Every line, Ethan said. Every doorway open for one person, you. Even exhausted, something tightened in my chest. Grief, pride, fury. All braided into a cold, clear resolve. We gathered it all. Payment records tied to my projects. Drafts with my metadata. Task logs proving I had completed work land and claimed. Strategy models reflecting my original designs. Hours passed. The night gave way to dawn. Daniel stepped out for calls, leaving Ethan and me in quiet concentration, the hum of servers like a heartbeat. You know what happens when you show up, Ethan said without looking up. I do. He finally met my eyes. Good. They've underestimated you for years. Don't give them a moment to recover. By sunrise, the room was covered in sticky notes, printouts, and diagrams. A full map of betrayal and truth, with my mother's trust clause circled in red at the center. 72 hours collapsed into preparation, strategy, and quiet moments where I could almost hear my mother. Don't shrink for them, Caroline. When they try to erase you, you sharpen. By the summit's morning, I was ready, sharpened to a point. Daniel arrived first, adjusting his tie. The board members we spoke to are ready, he said. They won't act without you in person. Richard has no idea. Good, I said, slipping the badge into my pocket. He doesn't deserve a warning. Downstairs, the hotel lobby buzzed with executives, analysts, and reporters, people who had once passed me by unnoticed, the same way my family did. I moved silently, Daniel and Ethan flanking me like guardians. Before we reached the main hall, a tall man in a navy uniform blocked our path. His badge read, Martin Cole, head of Summit Security. Miss Mercer, he said softly. Daniel stiffened. Ethan's eyes narrowed. Martin raised a hand. I'm not here to stop you, he said. I'm here to give you something. From his jacket, he produced a small worn notebook, pages creased and densely handwritten. I work nights, he explained. For years I noticed you in the building. You'd slip in late, leave early, always alone. I kept a record because someone had to. I flipped through the notebook. Dates, hours, rooms, notes. Proof I existed in the corners they tried to erase me from. Your brother was in Aspen the weekend he claimed to finish that defense project, Martin said. And you? 36 hours straight in the server room. I saw it all. My throat tightened. Why help me? He shrugged lightly. I've watched them take from you long enough. And my wife works in R&D. She says the company only functions because of your work. I closed the notebook, letting the weight of it settle. Thank you, I said steady. Make them listen, he replied. Some of us always knew. He stepped aside. We moved forward. The main hall was bright and polished. My father stood under the lights, his smile flawless, posture rigid. Veronica sat front row, serene and composed. Landon lingered near the podium, rehearsing the lines he would deliver once Dad announced the leadership changes. I waited behind the curtain, listening as the announcer called his name. And now our keynote speaker, Richard Mercer. Applause erupted. My father stepped forward. This was his kingdom. His moment. I walked onto the stage. The gasp from the crowd rippled through the room. My father's smile faltered. Veronica's hand flew to her chest. Landon went pale. What are you doing here? Richard barked into the microphone. I grabbed the second mic, my hand steady. Good morning. This is inappropriate, he spat. You're not well. No, I said, my voice carrying across the hall. What's inappropriate is declaring your daughter mentally unfit while she lies unconscious. What's inappropriate is leaving her alone in a hospital bed to cut her out of the company she built alongside you. Murmurs spread through the crowd. I pulled the folded note from my pocket, holding it high. He left this beside my bed. 5 words we stopped paying. Good luck. I placed it on the podium. That note. Daniel handed me the papers, Ethan cued the slides. Activated my mother's trust. The screen lit up. Incorporation papers showing Julia Hayes as majority owner. Next slide, the trust clause. Third, logs of my work compared to the projects Landon presented as his own. My father lunged forward. That information is private. No, I said calmly. It's true. Whispers ran through the audience. Journalists leaning forward. Board members shifting in their seats. I opened Martin's notebook. And this, I said, is a record kept by someone with no stake. Someone who saw everything you tried to erase. I locked eyes with my father. For the first time he looked small. You forgot who I am, I said softly. And what she, my mother, left me capable of. A board member stood. I motioned for an immediate vote of no confidence. Hands went up across the room. In less than 5 minutes it was over. My father remained frozen, staring at the floor as authority was stripped away. Veronica's poise cracked. Landon's facade shattered. I stepped back from the mic as applause rose. Not for me, but for truth landing where it belonged. For the first time since waking I felt alive. The room emptied slowly. Richard stayed seated long after the last executive departed. Veronica and Landon avoided everyone's gaze, retreating quietly. I didn't speak. Nothing remained to say. Daniel and Ethan guided me through the corridor behind the stage. The tension that had kept me rigid finally ebbed. I hadn't conquered a battle. I had restored what was mine. My mother's name, my work, my place. That evening, the board held an emergency session. Richard, Veronica, and Landon were removed from all positions of power immediately. Landon was reassigned to a junior analytics role. An entry-level position. The same one I'd been forced into years ago. Perhaps he'd understand real work for the first time. I was offered my mother's seat and title. I accepted quietly the way she would have. When I returned to Seattle, I went straight to the hospital, my room. The machines were gone, sheets fresh. The memory of waking alone tightened my throat, but this time the space didn't feel empty. I stood by the window watching the overcast city she once fought to protect. "I did it, Mom," I whispered. "I put us back where we belong." And for the first time since she passed, I felt her there. Steady, proud, unshakable. In the weeks that followed, I learned something my father never understood. Silence isn't weakness. It's the space where truth gathers strength. I didn't destroy my family. I stopped letting them destroy me. And when the dust settled, what remained wasn't revenge. It was restoration. My mother's legacy stood exactly where she intended it to be.